Right, it's been 4 weeks since I competed at Euros and that went terribly. And then training since has also been absolute dog. But we're going to get it back on track. The aim here is to go through the programming because I absolutely know we can get this to a point that it's not just winning at Euros, but getting to a standard that I know I can hit. And so let's get into the programming. Subscribe. So at the moment, let's just start off with squats. Squats at competition we're just going to say not great, pretty terrible. But one of the big issues I struggle with was the shoes. If you've been following for a little while, very confidently, I changed my shoes over the last couple of weeks. I moved from, what's this expression?
Just realising how contradictory we've
been. Yeah. So I went from my ROMs and then I was like, they're going to go into the Savs. And the Savaleos were like smaller heel, squat felt better. And then I got this really bad knee pain. And it turns out part of the shoe was stopping my knee from traveling properly. So I got a lot of pain. Anyway, we're moving to flats, this blog. Now that does mean there's going to be a load of new information, but I'm taking it back to a principle of where I did really well in training before. So the idea here is that I'm going to run a top double because I've been in the triples realm on a lower volume of demonstration of strength. I perform really well with my squat. High repetition in like exertion hasn't been great, but on the contrary, the like polar opposite, where I get most of my work in, is in that volume. So it's going to be a double, and then it's either into a big set of 5 or 6, and then soft 6s afterwards to accumulate the volume. So those are going to have to be sensible with the load choices. Flash forward to 4 weeks from now where he was not sensible with low choices and this all went out the window. But I've got high expectations. The one thing I know I'm going to keep is I am going to stay in heels on my secondary squats. Now, if you're struggling with your squats as a whole, high bar is one of my favorite variations at the moment to really reinforce staying in your legs and making your legs stronger. So if you find that your legs kick back early, hip shoot back, high bar is probably a good one. Now, I had a really tough block, so I'm not going to use it as data that was really relevant because, to be honest, I have not been enjoying training. So I'm going to run this as just static work right now. We'll see if I want to top set in the next 5 minutes. So squat's going to keep relatively simple. The only big thing that will also change is my only leg accessory has been leg extensions. Now we're back in the studio. There is actually a belt squat here, and that has been the only piece of leg equipment I can consistently use without pain. So that's going to be the intent, is we're going to bring back belt squats on day 1, which will be later today, and get some volume back. Looking at 3x10, maybe move to a 5x10, like depending if the intensity stays really low. If the intensity goes up, I'll stay to the lower volume. So then it's bench. And I think the issue here is I was relying on where my primary day was. Now, if you have a primary day on your bench, so let's say that it sits on day 1 or day 2 or day 3 or day 4, then the other days around it kind of have to prep for that day. And traditionally, my day 4 had been fantastic. And at the moment, it's been awful. It's actually been my worst bench session. And so rather than flog a dead horse, what I intend to do is day 1, which has been better, is keep that where my single sits, and then the low volume but slightly higher intensity work will be. So we're talking a single into triples. How many of them I've not decided just yet. That means that the day 2 can run softer. So this is my tempo bench work, and to stop me putting too much load on the bar, that's going to run as a double, not a single. And then accumulate volume. This is where the volume work will be. So this is my 4x6 sort of realm. Then day 3, rather than use regular pause bench to work as a primer for my last day, I now can just go for something lower stress. And so that's why I'm bringing back Spoto into my training. So this will be my tertiary bench session. At the moment, I've had a bit more shoulder grief, so I think this will actually really help with that. And then the last day, which will effectively run as a primer for my day 1, but with more recovery time, is going back to close grip. I actually ran this before, not even before prep, but before I last had a coach. And this is what they got rid of. And that's actually when my bench was the strongest it's ever been. So I'm going back to an old idea, but with slightly different protocol changes. So close grip's going to look like a triple into 5s and or 6s, depending on how that feels. So at the moment, you can see there's a lot of factors that are going to be changing, but I do need a fresh slate. I've been really, really struggling with any form of motivation to want to train. I really have not enjoyed this block at all, and actually didn't even do half of my last 2 sessions because I was mentally exhausted from this just being so poor. So then deadlifts. This is the one I've really struggled with. And I think it's because I keep thinking I have to follow a principle, which is silly because I wouldn't do this for my athletes. But I've been trying to move into volume because that's where like strength is made, but not necessarily because previously my best repeated blocks were running a top single to whatever soft realm and then doing relevant low volume but higher intensity. So I literally mean like triples north of a six. And I don't run that. What I tend to do is run a top triple and make that the intensity. And so that's been a failure. So week one, I'm running a soft single into triples that are a moderate intensity. And then I'm going to divide that up. So it will be soft single into a harsher double and then harsher triples. And we're going to slightly split that up through the block. The secondary deadlift day, I've really struggled with. I used the push paused deadlift really, really hard, and that did well. But this whole block, it's felt absolutely disastrous. And I think it's where I've been beaten up from the high bar, trying to do them in different shoes consistently. My back's taking a beating. And same for the deadlift work where it just wasn't holding up very well. So instead, the aim is going to be just linear, very soft sets. So I've got a 5x2 at sub 5. The first week, I'm literally 200 loaded at the top end. So the aim of these changes, first off with the squat, is going to be that it's going to be back to its strongest and most consistent. I want to see an E1 or M north of 235, ideally 240. With bench, it's getting back to pain-free, which should be pretty short-lived, but then be able to express at least a 145 plus bench at like a 6, because I can maintain that. And when it comes down to the deadlift, I don't even necessarily want to load a lot on the bar, but I should be seeing 250 move comfortably again rather than stress around the 240 mark. So seeing estimated maxes at the end of this block around 240, 165, and 285. And then in 4 weeks, potentially I'll have an announcement which Spencer doesn't know about yet, and I'll tell him just after this. So stay tuned for the next 4 weeks and we'll talk about what's going to happen next.